So we're all aware that nation states are adopting Bitcoin, but a lot of people in the space are not all happy about that. I mean, Bitcoin is supposed to be a bottom-up movement, not top-down. It's about the plebs, not the presidents, right?
The reality is that this is what Bitcoin winning looks like. If Bitcoin was not succeeding, no one would care. No country, no corporation, no individual pleb would be adopting it.
Bitcoin is winning, so you just better get used to it.
Up next, we have The Final Reserve, Why Nations Are Turning to Bitcoin, moderated by Jeff John Roberts, the crypto and finance editor at Fortune magazine.
Please give him a very warm welcome.
Good morning, Bitcoiners. We're here to discuss whether nation states should adopt Bitcoin, and to join me, please welcome Bitcoin OG Samson Mow. Come on out, Samson. Samson, don't be shy, get out here.
I was just going to drink some water.
Yeah. And let's welcome a special guest. We've got His Highness Prince Philip of Serbia.
My prince. Thank you.
We've got Samuel Coleman, who is a member of parliament for a Swiss canton. Come on, Samuel. And finally, come on out, Eve, who's doing some interesting stuff with the Swiss Central Bank. Good to be among the Bitcoiners. I'm a journalist who wrote an article last week calling XRP magic beans, and I've been getting all this hate mail. Anyone got a problem with calling XRP magic beans?
No?
No? Okay, cool. Good to be here. But here we've got an interesting topic today, which is nation states adopting Bitcoin. I can think of two off the top of my head. The little country of Bhutan has done it, and of course El Salvador. But Samson, I'm going to go to you first. Tell us, what's the state of play? And of course the US has too. It's now started a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Anyone else, and anyone else can be joining this soon.
So we're constantly engaging in pushing for nation-state adoption around the world. Our focus is mainly on Latin America, but we recently did a bunch of meetings in Asia, in Taiwan, Korea, and Japan. And there is interest, but I think by and large, a lot of the world is waiting for the US to really make a move. I don't believe the formation of the SBR is enough. They're looking for active accumulation. So everyone's kind of waiting for someone to make a move. But I believe we're getting very close to that point. So the first big domino should fall, and then they all fall.
Yeah. Well, Philip, what about Serbia? It sounds like you'd like Serbia to adopt Bitcoin?
Yeah, one day. So I've engaged with some politicians there, but most engagement I've had is actually with Republika Srpska, which is the Serbian autonomous region of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I'm quite far down the line maybe of getting some mining deal happening there. But I've also engaged in the region with many other politicians about Bitcoin adoption. It will happen eventually one day. I mean, all countries will adopt Bitcoin. But yeah, it's exciting. It's given my position as a hereditary prince of Serbia that I do get the opportunity to speak to high-level politicians, not just in Serbia but also in the region. And it's just great to push the idea of Bitcoin forward.
Yeah, and let's thank you. And let's turn to Switzerland too. I mean, I've been very impressed by Lugano. It's my first time here, a beautiful place, but also the Bitcoin adoption all around us. And I know Switzerland's been a leader, but where are we now? Samuel, you want to say what's going on in Switzerland? What's your interest in Bitcoin?
So I'm a member of the parliament in Canton Bern now for 9 years, and of course, as a Bitcoiner, a passionate Bitcoiner, I'm pushing forward for Bitcoin adoption. I've put forward some ideas. The parliament has voted on it, and now the government has to study the potential of Bitcoin mining. And we actually have on the 6th of November, I organized a meeting with the mining industry, with different Bitcoiners and the administration of Canton Bern to look at that potential. And then we'll see what come out of it. Otherwise, of course, Lugano is great what's happening here. And then we have Canton Zug, which is pro-Bitcoin. And I see a great potential also on every level of government, and I think that's important to be aware. It's not just about nation-state adoption. So, for example, my canton of Bern, we can get money on the international market for 55 basis points. Why not get some and put it into Bitcoin? So I think also sub-nation-state levels, even municipalities, they have a great opportunity by embracing Bitcoin. And then, of course, we are doing something on the national level, but Yves is the guy there, so I'll let him talk more about it.
So I'm also working with Samuel on a completely different aspect. It's top-down, but in Switzerland, the top part is actually the people. So we're harnessing the direct democracy of Switzerland in order to bring Bitcoin to the Swiss constitution. So it's a big challenge, of course, but the idea, of course, is that we're getting as many people as possible, and we have thousands of people who are supporting us, and of course we're looking for more. And normally in about 5 years, there would be a votation where everybody, all the citizens are voting. So it's really not coming from the government, it's really coming from the pleb. And the point is to have the Swiss National Bank holding some Bitcoin in their reserve alongside with gold. So this is where we're actually complementary, because he's starting from the government side and I'm starting from the people's side.
And that's interesting about having the bank do it too. So what exactly will the referendum, I know technically it's something else, but you're going to ask the people to vote. What exactly are you going to ask them to vote to do?
So currently in the Constitution, there's an article that says that the bank has to have reserves, the Swiss National Bank has to have reserves, and some of those reserves have to be in gold. Of course, they have a mandate, and we follow carefully that they're doing their mandate as best possible for everybody who uses the Swiss franc. So far, they're doing a pretty good job. And we're like the people in the Constitution doesn't mandate to have a certain amount of gold, for example, but it does mandate that it cannot be zero. And what we're adding in the Constitution, because also we want to be very careful because it's a big change, we're just adding 3 words, and in Bitcoin. That's it. So they have to have some reserves. That's mandatory. They have to have some of those reserves in gold. That's mandatory, and we're adding and in Bitcoin. And after that, of course, we're letting them, execute their mandate as best they can.
Yeah, I find the topics of reserves very interesting. Some of you probably are very familiar, but countries, they have reserve currencies. So if their own currency, is falling, they can use the reserves to go prop it up. And I think the common ones are the US dollar, the euro, Japanese yen, and the Swiss franc, and of course gold. Bitcoin, especially in these economic times, seems like a good thing to add. Samson, you and me are both Canadian. Would you be in favor of the government of Canada having Bitcoin as part of its reserves?
Obviously, I'm in favor, but the challenge is getting the government to do something. And I don't think the concerns are of the nature of economic prosperity right now. I think there are more systemic problems that are at top of mind. But I mean, there are smaller initiatives. So the city of Vancouver, my friend Mayor Ken Sim, he's been trying to get Bitcoin in the city reserves, and he even said that's a long process. Maybe it will take 2 years just to get through all the red tape. And the similar challenge is also at the country level. I mean, Canada has so much excess energy. We could have been a Bitcoin superpower. And I started talking about how Canada should be mining Bitcoin, I think in 2017, when the first gold rush or Bitcoin rush came and everyone was trying to get cheap energy from Hydro-Quebec. But if we had started mining then at a national level, then things would be very different now. And I don't think countries fully appreciate the leverage that having a Bitcoin reserve gives you. So just, I think yesterday, Trump called off the tariff discussions with Canada. And there is really no leverage. But if you can imagine Canada was mining Bitcoin in 2017 or even 2020, and we had accumulated a massive amount, because I think Canada had enough, has enough excess energy to support, or had enough excess energy to support 3 entire Bitcoin networks in 2020. I think that was when I ran the calculation. We would have had a massive amount of hash rate, mining companies set up there, and just our national reserve. and that would give a massive amount of leverage in any discussion.
Yeah, and countries have always held gold. It funds wars, it sort of backstops everything, and if Bitcoin's digital gold, I think economically makes sense. But if you've all read your Bitcoin white paper and read the Genesis block, one thing we know Satoshi teaches is beware of governments. Governments are trouble. So, I'm going to put this one to you, Samuel. You're the sort of professional politician on stage. What are you going to tell people who are like, maybe this is not a good idea? Do we really want all of the world's most powerful people messing with Bitcoin?
Yeah, so of course that's something I hear again and again from the Bitcoin community, from that side that says, no, Bitcoin is meant as money for the people. It's supposed to be like only bottom up and not for the big guys, not for Wall Street, for BlackRock or for governments. Well, everyone of course knows that Bitcoin it's a free internet protocol, so anyone can use this internet protocol that chooses. Bitcoin cannot discriminate, and everyone is aware of this reality. But then the question is, should politicians advocate for a proactive Bitcoin strategy for the government? And I understand that position that says, no, let's really not push this, but I see there are a lot of arguments which speak for actually having a proactive Bitcoin strategy for government. So especially also for us Bitcoiners, I think it's a good thing, because if the government has a strategic Bitcoin reserve, their interests become more aligned with interests of Bitcoiners, or with the interests of, or let's say the values of, that are embedded in the Bitcoin protocol. So that's one argument. Another argument is, as Bitcoiners, we are aware that at some point in time, we don't know exactly when, but that the fiat system will go through a crisis. I mean, it's been going through different crises, but there's probably a big crisis ahead. And if that time comes, if the shit hits the fan, then I prefer to live in a country where the government already has a strategic Bitcoin reserve and they're well positioned to deal with the crisis financially, and that they're not going like into debt, 200% of GDP into debt, and then come up with crazy ideas. Oh, we could tax Bitcoiners 50%, or just tell them you need to give us 50% for us to get out of debt. So of course we know we can lose our keys in a boating accident, or we can move to El Salvador, but maybe I got family and friends in Switzerland and I don't want to move away. So I think it's just better also for Bitcoiners if the interests of the government are more aligned with our interests, and if the government holds Bitcoin, I see this as a good way forward.
That's an interesting argument. So the culture of Bitcoin comes into the government. So, okay. I've got a separate concern, though, about governments and Bitcoin. I'm going to put this one to you, Your Highness. Okay, so my government owns Bitcoin. But who is my country in the government? And here's what I'm afraid of. I know you would never do this, but suppose you're running Serbia one day. You decide Serbia should get Bitcoin. Everyone's great. But then I wake up one day and go, okay, where is that Bitcoin? And how do I know you're holding it for the country and not for yourself? And frankly, I've got this question about Bukele in El Salvador and the guy in Bhutan. It's for the country, but I want to see the wallet, and what's the system we can design to make sure that whoever's getting Bitcoin for the people of the country is not basically rugging the country.
It's a very good concern, and this is something that we at Jan3 speak about, and it's not something that we've witnessed yet. And well, the Bitcoin it's transparent to that degree, so it's difficult for someone to actually game it. So it's there for everyone to see. You can see the transactions happening on the main chain level. So yeah, we at Jan3 have talked about this, and we haven't witnessed it yet, as I said before. So this is something that we will, when we engage with nation states, as we speak to them about this possibility, and we tell them that that Bitcoin is there for the long term. It's not there to benefit themselves. And Bitcoin is, at the end of the day, Bitcoin doesn't care about politicians, and politicians will care about Bitcoin. And more people are waking up to that idea, so that they're using Bitcoin. Politicians are using Bitcoin on their platform to talk about how to get people more to create capital formation, so individuals have become more sovereign and more and protect themselves from inflation. So when countries start stacking Bitcoin, it helps to lower the time preference of individuals on a individual level, but also when one country starts stacking it, then other countries will start to wake up to it. And that's what we do at Jan3, is to show them that Bitcoin can help other countries. So I'm losing my thought over here.
No, I'm following you. Well, Samson, I know you're speaking to governments about this, and I mean, let's go ahead with my example. Canada, gets wise, starts getting Bitcoin. What is the perfect system to ensure it's transparent? Because frankly, suppose Russia did it. Do you think Vladimir Putin would, have a public wallet address for everyone to see, and every time he announced it, there'd be the transparency? I think you need a representative, democratic, transparent government for this to work. What do you think?
Well, I think that's one part of it, but the other part is, like, what is the end goal? I think getting a country to adopt Bitcoin in some form, the real motivation is that the people adopt it. So people look to the government as a signal, like, can we use Bitcoin? Can we spend Bitcoin? Is it okay? And if the government is building a reserve, then generally the people kind of think maybe it's okay. Like, even in the US, you technically can't really use Bitcoin for payments, but Steak and Shake is taking Bitcoin for payments now too. It's just the administration, the government has a different disposition towards it, which encourages people to be more receptive to it. And I think that is what you want. So it's always a risk that there is a dictator and they're going to run away with the Bitcoin later. Fortunately, you can track it all because it's on chain. But I think there are systems that you can build that make it more resilient. So more akin to like a Fort Knox. Maybe they have a multi-sig solution and the key material is stored in vaults split up around the country and not easily physically accessible, and they're using hardware wallets for transactions, and they can't actually do too much with it. And there are enterprise solutions, I think, that are being developed that will help with this, sort of like maybe a hardware security modules or different systems for permissioning, similar to like a corporation would use. But I think a lot of these solutions will be paired probably with more democratic systems, not dictatorships, where someone can take the funds and run with it.
Yeah, because I'm in favor as long as I can see the wallet address. Are you the same position there?
Well, I think you also want to know exactly how they're structuring it too and how the key material is held.
Yeah, I mean, I think the safety protocols and multi-sig and stuff is good enough. I trust Bitcoin security, but I don't trust the political leaders unless I can see the wallet.
But two things I want to say. First, usually when we're talking about strategic Bitcoin reserves and everything, we're talking about the price or the value. One thing that is very important to remember is that Bitcoin is technology. And so as Samson was saying, there are lots of programmability features that can be used. The fact that also it can be, the ownership or the control can be spread among different actors. So this is something that is actually very, very good for countries where maybe the government is well known and trusted and respected today, but we don't know what's happening tomorrow. Adopting Bitcoin in their reserves is actually a little bit more comfortable and more practical than having gold in terms of, like the bulkiness and everything. A lot of countries don't own their own gold. They actually send it to, let's say, England or Canada. So that's one thing. And if we're taking, for example, the example of Bhutan, it is not the government and it is not the king who owns the Bitcoin. It's actually a sovereign fund. It's a company that belongs to the government that operates the mining and actually owns the Bitcoin. So I think it's also very interesting to think that it used to be very difficult, therefore only the top of the government would be in control. And sometimes even they would not be in control because it's bulky and impractical. But today, because it's software, systems can be put in place. So this is why we are addressing the Swiss National Bank. But in reality, there is also another aspect to all this. You're not going to be able to prevent Putin or whoever to buy Bitcoin if they want to. You're not going to be able to prevent the US to do asset forfeiture and then get the Bitcoin and say now it belongs to the government. So now the problem should be taken the other way around. It should be how do we build and how do we lead by example so that people in the world understand when their government is doing it the right way or the wrong way, because they won't be able to prevent their government to say, we're printing money, we're getting Bitcoin, and then we leave.
Yeah, and the more people have Bitcoin, the more they'll be able to hold the government accountable. I think that's a good point.
And understand what's happening.
Yeah. There's big debate, as you know, I think a panel coming up looks very interesting on the debate right now between core protocol and knots. Which one it should be adopted. That's a question for that panel. I don't have the expertise, but it does raise the question, how involved do you want the government to do it? Would you like them simply passively holding it, or would you like your government mining and running a node? Samson?
Well, I think it's good if governments are mining because a lot of systems of government just seem to persist. And some people call it the deep state or whatever, but if governments are mining, maybe they just mine and they're kind of oblivious to the current politics of Bitcoin development and they're just quietly hashing away. And that's actually the best thing. Like if you look at the block size war, it's because people were trying to get political and push for things. But governments are large, unwieldy, slow-moving organizations. They're going to set up a mining operation and they'll just be processing transactions in the background. And I also think as energy companies become mining companies and vice versa, that becomes more of a de facto state of Bitcoin, that mining is just a load balancing mechanism with a benefit to it. And that's probably the best state. Like everyone is processing transactions. Mining is distributed amongst many different countries geographically, geopolitically, and the Bitcoin network just hums quietly along.
Okay.
Thanks.
If I may, people who are adopting Bitcoin in their own personal life, they always come from one angle, and as they're falling down the rabbit hole, they're discovering more things because they're asking questions, because they're exposed to, holding, for example. I'm starting to hold Bitcoin, how do I hold it better, and what are the dangers? Government will be facing that kind of apprenticeship, or I don't know how to say, learning curve. And this is also why it's important that government starts early, because sooner or later there will be, like he was saying, the domino effect where everybody will be rushing. There will be FOMO the same way there are FOMOs during the peaks of the bull runs for people. There will be FOMO at some stage for governments and central banks and institutions. You don't want that everybody is winging it, nobody understands what's happening. So the sooner people start, also the sooner, for example, in Ethiopia today, they are having a lot of excess energy, hydro energy. They're selling it, and miners are coming and paying, and it's great because they're making money out of it. Now it's 2.5% of the hash rate worldwide, I think, is in Ethiopia. Sooner or later, they will realize, why don't we mine? Or why don't we mine half of it and we sell half of it? This is what's happening. Sébastien Gouspillou was on this stage to present what he's doing in a natural reserve in Democratic Republic of Congo. So they are actually mining for the money, but the money they're using to pay for the forest guards. To protect the national forest. But at the same time they're selling electricity, they're also learning how to mine. As they're learning how to mine, locals are learning how to maintain, update, operate this machinery, and it creates jobs, it creates opportunity. This is where each step will come in its time, but it's very important to start the first step, and usually the first step is number go up.
Yeah, I'm still trying to, get around this contradiction of, because this government's going to go overseas and help these people by doing this project, but just so often when governments go into things, it just ends badly. Although in theory, I do like the idea of, these poor places getting prosperity through Bitcoin, but I'd be curious to how it's going to work on the ground. But you two guys, you're the ones who actually want to do this. You want to, politically vote so that, Switzerland's going to, adopt Bitcoin, and, Serbia, you'd like them to do the same. But for a practical matter, it works. On your first day, where are you going to get your Bitcoin? What do you, Samson's proposed a mining regime, which I think is, interesting one. But realistically, what would you do on your first day, Your Highness? You've now got the power to get some Bitcoin. Would you do it through mining, or would you go out and buy it on the open market, or how would you get the Bitcoin?
I think mining is probably the best way. It's a budget-neutral way to do it. It's something I really believe in, that I'm trying to push forward in Serbia. That when there's excess energy, when there's stranded energy, Bitcoin will actually seek out that stranded energy, and we have a public grid, but also a private grid. Right now, I'm in conversations with some private energy providers, trying to set up some pilot projects to teach them how mining actually works. And hopefully that will catch the attention of the public grid. And we can then use that as well to look into other renewable sources like geothermal. So I think mining, as you said, as I believe, is probably one of the best ways to stack Bitcoin. But what you talked about before is if a bad politician gets in the way, they might actually print money to buy Bitcoin. I think the first government that does that will, yeah, that's an interesting scenario, and maybe others might follow suit. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't think that's going to work out well. So I'm very much a believer that we do it in a much more rational, incentivized way to get people to understand that Bitcoin is there to help individuals and not.
Yeah. Just counterpoint, it just seems easier if you want your government to have Bitcoin to just go buy some, because a mining operation is a lot more technical knowledge, infrastructure, people. But you know, I mean, you could be in this position, Samuel. You persuade enough of your colleagues in Switzerland. Switzerland's going to own Bitcoin. What would you do?
So I proposed 4 bills in December last year. One was that the government would actually build a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and another was that citizens could pay taxes and fees in Bitcoin. A third one, that government employees could receive part of their salary in Bitcoin. And the fourth one, which got a 2/3 majority in the end, which surprised me how clearly it was. There was favor for that proposal, was at least to study it. The other 3 bills, we sort of missed 10 votes. So it got close, and that it got close was a big surprise for me. I think there are really a number of ways how the government could go about it. One is education, of course. I think there's so much fraud going on, so many scams, and if the government would just give a sort of orientation, or maybe the police would give an overview how to avoid scams, I think that's important. Then really the active buying of Bitcoin, be it by just spending a bit less, or by going into debt to buy Bitcoin, which I think for government is an option, because the government goes into debt anyway, so why not go a little bit more into debt to buy Bitcoin? And then with the mining, I don't think the government itself needs to make a company that mines Bitcoin, because there are already, at least in Switzerland, there are different electricity providing companies, producing companies, and they are majority owned by the cantonal government, for example, or by municipalities. And so if they invest in Bitcoin mining, and if they perform well financially, then indirectly the government also profits from it, but the government does not have to run it itself. And at the end of the day, I think it's also important to remember the government is not just some abstract thing, but it's people. It's people in the government, and in the executive branch, in the legislature, in the administration, and these people, they also get their minds changed by engaging with Bitcoin. And so as many Bitcoiners can testify, Bitcoin has changed our way of thinking, lowering the time preference. So this will also happen to the people that work in the government, for the government, and so we'll also see a positive effect there.
Yeah, I like your idea of giving people options, pay taxes, or if you want to put your retirement in it, and create Bitcoin-friendly policies, because I guess my reservation as a taxpayer, that's my money. You know, I don't want the government taking my money and investing it, because I'd rather invest it myself. You know, I don't want the government going out, taking my money and investing in chocolate factories or anything like that. So that's why, you know, even if it's good intention for Bitcoin, I don't know if I would trust them to start a mining operation. But Samson, I'm going to give you the last word and sort of make the case for what we're going to see next and how to best persuade people. And also, are you worried about a backlash too if you come in too heavy? Because there's people out there who don't like Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I would say, I think mining is still the optimal channel forward, because if you think of the whole construct, like what is the government doing? And the government buying Bitcoin is sort of a no-no. It's like they're spending funds, public funds, on something like an investment or a speculative asset, and you go down this rabbit hole of should they be investing, and then it opens up a lot of cans of worms, like what should they invest in? But mining is more neutral, because a lot of countries have excess energy. We were just in Paraguay. We met with a senator there and some other people, and they have enough. They have like 4 terawatt hours excess a year, and that translates into about 1,200 to 1,400 Bitcoin that's just being washed away or sold at a loss to neighboring countries, which a lot of countries do. Like Canada sells really cheap energy to the US when we could have been mining it. But if you have this real-world example of Bhutan that's actually monetizing excess energy, and now they have $1 billion+ of Bitcoin, and they're building a new airport using that money, I think that changes the mental calculus for governments that, okay, this is a real thing that we can do, this can be implemented, and energy is money, and we can do things with this money. But your other question at the end was, what's the other side of the sword? Like, I think when the US created the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve that's based off of seized funds, that could be a double-edged sword, because the incentive now is to seize instead of buying or mining. But we've seen the US add, I think, $14 billion of seized assets to it, so they're growing their SBR, probably.
Yeah, next thing they could declare you a criminal and take your Bitcoin.
Well, they can always declare you as a criminal, but I mean, that's the risk of living in the society of today. There are so many different areas that can be weaponized against you, like, for anything. But I think having a push to get countries to mine using excess is better than trying to seize more coins to build up your reserve.
Well, if we have leaders as enlightened as you people, I think we'll all be in good hands. But let's just hope for the best. Okay. Please give a hand to our great panelists. Very interesting discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good job. Thank you.